And our main speaker today is Seamus Hogan. Seamus, who hails from the next parish to us down in Oration in Kildangan. As a teenager, the same age as Denny Hayes, he saw what happened in 1968 and 69 and 70, the burning of houses and streets in Ballymurphy and all the different areas of the north. Ballymurphy, where many of the people were shot dead by British troops. He could have stayed in his very comfortable job in Dublin, a pensionable, permanent job, but he chose the path that Denny Hayes and his comrades had before him. They brought about peace and freedom in the 26 counties, but they're still a part of the country that's still occupied by British forces. Seamus served 2 prison terms in Mountjoy and Portlaoise. He was never convicted of anything. The only conviction he was is the Chief Superintendent stood up in the court and said he believed something. There was never a charge against him. He served a number of years in jail. He was there when the famous helicopter escaped from Mountjoy, and he helped to man a door to make sure that it couldn't be interfered with when it was taken off. And he was again very much involved when a lot of the people escaped from Portlaoise prison. He both knew the inside and the outside, and he again served an 18-month prison term. He was caught, even though 11 men very close to him escaped. So we call on Seamus Hogan to give the oration for Margaret.
That's fine. By way of introduction, can I say that some years ago, the North Tipperary Republican Memorial Committee, with the 100th anniversary of various events from the War of Independence and the Civil War coming up, it was decided to hold individual commemorations to honour those volunteers who gave their lives in the struggle for freedom, that each of their stories would be told. The first one held was for Michael O'Kennedy of Nina in July 2020, and one of the more recent ones being for Johnny Sheehy and Matt Ryan from just over the road here in Boher in March 2023. Today, we remember volunteer Dennis Hayes from the Dingers Hill, Ballywilliam. Born into a large family in the year 1902, he joined the local IRA in his teens, a group that comprised over 80 men in what was known as North Tipperary's 3rd Battalion, Ballywilliam. This, you will agree, was a significant number for a small area, and together with an active Coming to Mon group, reflected a burning local desire for independence. Dennis Hayes, known as Denny, was a very active volunteer and eventually rose to the rank of captain. His home was subjected to many raids by both the British Army and the RIC and was burnt down by them eventually. It was rebuilt subsequently with the help of neighbours. Denny volunteered for most of all the major engagements that took place in the North Tipperary area. The attack on Borsicane Barracks involved over 150 men, right through to the ambush at Muderini, and numerous attacks on RIC personnel. As was the case in those times and since, many volunteers, especially the experienced ones, travelled to other brigade areas and other counties to help in the struggle. Dennis Hayes was one of these. He fought not alone in North Tipperary, but into East Limerick and into North Cork. All these areas had a high level of activity. Indeed, Tomás Malone, who lived for a long number of years over here in Boher, was a commander in East Limerick. One of the last attacks Denny Hayes took part in was at a place called Shraherla on the border of North Cork and South Limerick. Other men from both Ballywilliam and Newport also took part in this attack. A large commemoration was held a number of years ago in Shraherla, in which I think 7 volunteers, including Pat Starr of Nina, were killed. The bravery of the North Tipperary men was very much acknowledged at that commemoration. Denny was back in North Tipperary within approximately 1 week. He would take part in a further ambush on the police between the villages of Newtown and Portrue. When the treaty came, it was no surprise that the vast majority of the fighting men, including Denis Hayes, would oppose it. He was as active in the Civil War as he had been in the previous few years. This area, being on the main route between Dublin and Limerick, was a hotbed of activity. Many great men gave their lives in this period, including the 2 from Boher that I have previously mentioned. Denny survived the Civil War, but was a marked man for the new Free State authorities. Aware of his fearlessness and reputation, he was forced to carry a handgun at all times to protect himself, as indeed were many of the anti-treaty men. Approximately 12 months after the Civil War, Denis Hayes was killed by these authorities. The circumstances of his death are well known. Heading to a house dance at Casey's Cross on the Thurles Road outside of Nina on a Sunday night, his passing through Nina on his motorbike was noted. The civic guards gathered a party of about 20 Free State soldiers from the military barracks to accompany them to Casey's Cross, where a trap was set to ensure he could not escape. Denny, having initially visited friends, then parked his bike away from the dance house and walked down the road. When confronted by the civic guards, he realised he was in grave danger and tried to escape by jumping a ditch, whereupon he was shot dead from behind by another group of concealed civic guards and military. It was acknowledged at the inquest that his own gun had not been fired. The incident happened at approximately 12:30 a.m. on a Monday morning, and an inquest was convened at 10 a.m. later the same morning, so quickly that neither his family or friends were aware of it. A solicitor was appointed by the state to represent him, but was unaware of the circumstances of what happened. Nor were any civilians called, although many were about at the time. Unsurprisingly, all involved in his killing were exonerated. Further indignity was imposed upon the family when his remains were refused admission to the church. This, of course, happened quite frequently during these times. And I want to compliment Father O'Brien on what he mentioned there about the apology from the Primate of All Ireland in recent years, in recent times. And it was, even though perhaps it was 101 years too late, I suppose an acknowledgement was better late than never. Captain Denis Hayes was buried here in Burgess Cemetery. 15 years after his death, his mother received a paltry sum in compensation of £112 and 10 shillings from the state. I'm not good at sums, but I'd figure it is probably about €150 in today's money. A belated acknowledgement of the state's culpability in his killing. There has been numerous documentaries on TV, lectures held and books written about events that happened 100 years ago in recent times. Some of these were scurrilous, slanderous attacks on the character of brave people who gave their lives willingly in pursuit of a republic. I want to single out one individual's vicious attack in our local paper a few years ago on the Ballywilliam IRA unit in general and Dennis Hayes in particular. This was followed by a book published by this man subsequently on the life of Dan Breen from West Tipperary, purporting to give new insights into him and his life. And these were very quickly, strongly repudiated by nationalists from the West Tipperary, Glenavarlow area. The North Tipperary Republican Memorial Committee responded strongly in the Nina Guardian to this individual's allegations. No later than last Sunday evening on RT Radio, I came across an interview with a gentleman by the name of Dr. Andrew Beelan-Berger, a university professor no less in UCC. This man spoke about and is researching all the deaths related to the Civil War. This, we were told, would be the definitive work on the casualties of the Civil War. But I can tell you now that it will not include the death of Denis Hayes. It was too much of an embarrassment to the Free State. And this makes our small ceremony here today all the more important that our local heroes are remembered. Finally, I just want to say that although Denis Hayes was not killed in the War of Independence or the subsequent Civil War, it in no way diminishes his contribution to both of these struggles. And he is entitled to the same recognition as all the other 32 volunteers whose names appear on our monument in Banba Square, Nina. Thank you for your attendance here today and for your patience in listening to me.
Thanks, Seamus. And it's great that what Seamus said, an accurate account of that, is recorded and will be recorded here. And it will be on a Facebook page that we have put up about all of those. It's just go into Facebook and look at Celebrating 1916, and we'll have that up in the next week or so.